Hey everybody, no you're not experiencing deja vu, this is the exact same video that I posted last week. One of my viewers, who I'd like to specially thank, brought to my attention that some of the statistical information I had posted was incorrect. When I did a little deeper fact-finding, I did discover that Dungeon Boss Wiki, where I had pulled some of these numbers from, didn't appear to take into account the slow buff, which is applied to tanks, giving them an attack and HP boost. I hope you guys still enjoy the video, especially now that it's a little more accurate. Hey everybody, this is Aeroica. Thanks so much for stopping by for another video. I am super excited to bring this episode to you today because in this video we're going to figure out which of the 12 tanks that are available in the Dungeon Boss game is actually the best overall. And I did this using a series of categories, looking at some of their traits a little specifically, and looking at their number values and ranking them accordingly. I hope you find this information enjoyable, so sit back, relax, and let's find out who is the #1 tank in Dungeon Boss. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 6 different categories that each tank is going to be judged in. In our first category, we have Hero Power, which is an approximation of damage based on factors such as Ascension, Stars, and Level. While it might not seem completely obvious why we're looking at this number, it does speak to the versatility of a tank and having them assume one of your 4 maximum roles when going through a dungeon, and their ability to not only perform as a tank, but also push out some decent damage as well. Additionally, we're going to look at attack power, which is the amount of damage that will be performed and the factor that weights against any particular attack. We also have the defense rating, which is a mitigation for incoming attacks. We have the health pool category, which will not only speak to a tank's survivability, but also their ability to be able to be healed and survive rounds until the healer can do so. Additionally, we'll also be looking at resistant percentages, but we will not be looking at resistances that are native to the tank in general. So for instance, if we take Aeroica as an example, he has certain resistances to freezing and for chill, but we will only be looking at resistances that are foreign to him and could be potentially damaging. Lastly, we'll be looking at the traits, and those are going to be valued as to anything that speaks to a particular tank, meaning that if they are defensive in quality or healing in quality, then they will be considered. As an example of this, if we look at a tank that has a particular trait which prevents them from being poisoned or diseased, they would receive a single point for each of those types of statuses which they are not able to have afflicted on them. As we look at the scoring, we're going to use a reverse-tiered system, meaning that there are 12 tanks within the Dungeon Boss game, and in each category, all 12 tanks will be judged. The #1 tank in any category will receive 12 points, while the last ranking tank will only receive 1. This will be the case for 5 of the 6 categories, except for the final category, traits, which will be subjected to a point value system which is specific to whatever traits that particular tank might carry. There are only going to be 3 rules applied to this contest, the first of which will not take into account any specific elemental weakness for a particular tank. As an example of this, we know that Aeroica has a weakness towards nature enemies, and it's assumed that the player would not take him into a dungeon where nature enemies were the primary mob encountered. Additionally, we will not be looking at traits or abilities that require the player to build a specific group in order to gain true benefit. An example of this would be Pygnius' Hog Wild, which is a trait that only applies towards other beast allies. And lastly, we will not be looking at traits which are only have a chance to proc rather than are in place 100% of the time. Since we don't know what the proc percentage is, it makes it difficult to gauge the real value of that particular trait or ability. In the hero power category, you see that there are several heroes which are clumped together and separated only by a nominal amount of points, especially when we take a look at everything between Overlord, Executum, and Julius. You'll see that they're really only off somewhere between 15 and 25 points total, but it's only at the very top of the pack where Pygnius pulls ahead at 31.47 that really puts a clear and distinct lead in this particular category. In the attack power category, Femus dominates the charts at 2215, which is several hundred attack power more than even the famous Aeroica. Now, Femus reaches these levels because he is rated as a slow attacking tank, and approximately a month ago, slow tanks were provided with a buff which increased not only their health pool but also their attack power. This will directly relate to Femus's high damage output. The defense rating for a tank is probably one of the more critical areas where we want a tank to excel. Overlord Executum tops the charts at 1948, with Alexandros not too far behind at 1911. At the bottom of the pack is Femus at 1354, and you're going to want to keep that in mind if you're going to use him for a tank, because even against the mid-grade tanks, he's pretty far below the average. The health pool stat is another critical area for tanks, and Phenol dominates this category at 7365. Even the second place Femus is not all that close with 7051, and in last place is Alexandros with 4333. Here we see how significant the buff was to slow attacking tanks, but don't be discouraged if your tank has a lower health pool, because this can be overcome with good healing and good strategy. In the resistance category, it should again be noted that we are not looking at those resistances which are native to any tank, and are only looking at those which are foreign and thus potentially more damaging. Additionally, when we see tanks with the exact same percentages, it is the lowest score within that bracket that goes to both tanks. In this category, Bramble tops the chart at 34%, with Baylog at the bottom at 20%. It should be noted that while resistances do point to a particular weakness against certain attacks, it does not necessarily mean that they cannot be overcome with good strategy and good healing tactics. In this category, each trait was awarded 1 point per affliction that the tank was immune to. While the average tank in this category is immune to at least 1 or 2, Stonefist comes in first place with a whopping 7 points. The magical trait provides him a reduced damage from non-physical attacks, and Impervious covers 6 different afflictions, which he is immune to. While the taunts category was not considered for any final impact towards the end scoring, it should be noted that any tanks listed here and considered throughout this contest who did not have a taunt would receive a 12-point reduction from their overall score. This is because when we talk about a tank, a taunt is a quintessential ability that is required and necessary for them to actually do their job. Without it, we can't really say that they're a tank whose job it is to take the brunt of the damage from incoming attacks. The taunt is what makes the tank valuable, and is what also directs the incoming damage where it needs to be, and away from your more fragile heroes. I attempted to score the taunt abilities in conjunction with the taunt energy requirements and the speed of the tank. Under close examination, all of these tanks are rather well balanced, and the only notable difference is Igorok's damage reflection of 65%, but which comes to us at the added cost of a single energy over the average of 5. When we consider the speed of each of the tanks, all of the tanks are pretty much normal, except for a few which come in at the slow rating. However, this is typically offset by the update which occurred, giving them an additional attack and defense boost. While it is ideal that a taunt should occur as early in the fight as possible, just because the tank is slow doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have any value in a particular fight. So here we are at the end of the competition with Aeroica topping the charts, and hopefully this scoring system here will give you an idea about which of the tanks that's currently available in your arsenal is going to be the best to use. Keep in mind that if your tanks are not fully 6-starred, fully ascended, and fully leveled up, then the numbers are not going to exactly match, but at least will give you an idea that in any given situation, the tank that you have available to you and one that you feel is most appropriate should perform at its best. Additionally, it should be noted that not every aspect of each of these tanks was necessarily taken into consideration for the purpose of this scoring. Your own personal experience and preference may add or even subtract points from a particular tank and thus create a completely different scoring table. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it informative. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and I try to respond to everybody that takes the time to do so. Additionally, if you have an idea for a video such as this, let me know that as well, and I'll try to put something together for you. If you haven't already done so, please consider liking and subscribing. I would absolutely appreciate that. I wish you guys a great day, and I will see you at the next video.